And I work for the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. I'd like to welcome you to the Sandwiching and History tour of the Edward H. Colgan House. And thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank Justin LaFoon. Where's Justin? He's way in the dining room. Everybody give Justin a hand. Thank you so much for allowing us to crowd into your house. And I'd like to recognize Donna Thomas and Jennifer Carmen for all the work they've done in this neighborhood, specifically on the 2300 block of South Summit Street. And we will talk more about that later at the end of the tour. This tour is worth 1 hour of continuing education credit through AIA credits. If you're an architect, see me or Patricia Blick at the end of the tour. Also, there's a flyer on the dining room table from our office talking about a free cemetery iconography workshop for children tomorrow at Mount Holly Cemetery in Little Rock. But I've heard from Holly Hope that they're going to take adults too. So if anybody wants to participate in that, pick up a flyer. The Edward H. Colgan House was built in 1913 and is located in the Central High School Neighborhood Historic District, which was listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 1996 for its association with the westward expansion of Little Rock, the 1957 Little Rock Central High School desegregation crisis, and its eclectic blend of architectural styles. The oldest building remaining in the historic district was constructed about 1870 by Milton L. Rice, a carpetbagger lawyer, state senator, and president of the Cairo and Fulton Railroad. Rice built an imposing Gothic Revival style house known as Oak Grove on a 12-acre estate about 1 mile west of the Little Rock city limits at that time, giving you an idea of how far out in the country this area was. That house is still standing at 2015 Battery Street, although it has been altered from its original Gothic Revival style appearance. Near the turn of the 20th century, the West End, as the neighborhood was then known, consisted of open fields and forest and was very sparsely developed. In fact, the 1890 Guide to Little Rock described the area west of the city limits as, quote, a capital place for a picnic and big enough for half the families of town to go at once without disturbing each other. It wasn't until the mid-1890s that significant construction began in the neighborhood, mostly as a result of the streetcar line. In 1885, the Little Rock Traction and Electric Company extended its streetcar line to the west along 14th Street, which is now Daisy Bates, from High, or MLK, over to Park Street, where it ended at the West End Park. The park served as a popular attraction at the end of the streetcar line and encouraged people to visit the West End. West End Park was densely wooded and boasted a lake for boating, as well as a pavilion for dancing, a bicycling track, a roller coaster, and a baseball field. The first amateur baseball games were played in the park in 1893, and by the century's end, baseball had become the principal attraction at West End Park, as it was home to the Little Rock Baseball Association. After the Little Rock Street Railway Company opened Forest Park in Pulaski Heights in 1904, they sold West End Park to the city of Little Rock. The use of the park tapered off, becoming largely inactive by 1912, and Little Rock High School, or Central High, was completed on that site of West End Park in 1927. So the park is where the high school is today. Orrin F. Sheldon's dairy farm was located on acreage near 21st Street between Summit and Schiller. Sheldon maintained a residence on the same property. The 1900 census showed Orrin Sheldon, his wife Adelaide, and their daughter Ollie living in the 2100 block of Schiller, which was not yet technically open, and operating a dairy. Their neighbors, Sandy and Jane Lee, worked as laborers at the dairy. O.F. Sheldon's addition, which encompassed the area between 20th all the way down to 29th Street and Summit west to Park, was platted on October 9, 1892. However, the 1913 Sanborn reveals that much of that addition was not developed until way later. The Sanborn maps and city directories also confirm that Sheldon Farmstead, his house, was still standing in 1913, and it was occupied by his widow, Mrs. Adelaide J. Sheldon. Now about this block, the 2300 block of South Summit. The houses on the west side, or our side of the street, are located in Sheldon's addition, while the houses on the east side, or the other side of the street, are in the Oak Terrace addition. The 1911 city directory shows no homes built in this block at all, but there were homes in both the 2200 and the 2400 blocks of South Summit at that time. The 2300 block was developed in 1912 and 1913 as a part of a tract development supervised by the Holman Real Estate Company. Lloyd C. Holman, previously a real estate salesman for the Southern Trust Company, started his own real estate business in 1911. Holman Real Estate started out slowly, but they soon advertised widely in city directories, advertising their expertise in real estate, insurance, farmlands, and rentals. And I have one of his ads on my PowerPoint. Whenever I get done talking, if you get a chance to stop by and look at the laptop sitting here next to me, I have it on a loop. It's got a lot of before and after photos of this house, and it also has a couple old advertisements. So Holman Real Estate's one of those ads. The company's development along Summit Street consisted of two-story American four-squares with slight variations of the same plan. The American four-square is characterized by simple, square or rectangular two-story plans, 4 rooms over 4 rooms, so 4 square, with low-pitched hipped roofs and 1-story full-width front porches. Typically, colonial revival, craftsman, or prairie-style details are applied to the houses too. Buyers chose their foundation, porch, chimney, and wall materials, style of the dormers, whether it be hipped, gabled, or a shed roof dormer, their window placement and the pane arrangement of those windows, and decorative details like dentils, like the house just to the south of us has dentils around underneath the eaves, false half timbering, boxed or open eaves, coins, brackets, etc., etc. And the interior floor plan and finishes were also slightly different. You had a couple options on those. And then the house was built to those specifications. The Vine Couch House at 2315 South Summit, which is across the street from us, sold for $6,000 in 1914. But the Colgan House has some unique features not seen in any other houses in this block. Things like oak floors both downstairs and upstairs, whereas all the other houses on this block have oak downstairs, pine upstairs. Oak trim throughout the house, whereas all the other ones have stained yellow pine trim. A different floor plan and different placement of the fireplace, being right here as soon as you walk in. Also has more of a craftsman sensibility to the entire inside of the house. So this was probably slightly more expensive. In the early 20th century, the Central High neighborhood was largely home to white middle-class residents. However, it was technically an integrated neighborhood with pockets of African American residents, many of whom worked for nearby white families. The 1914 city directory had listings for 11 of the 12 homes that were on the 2300 block. It didn't include 2312 for some reason, but it was here by then. And everyone was white and upper to upper middle class. So from that 1914 directory for this block, I'll read you off some things that people did. Going down the street, one guy was a travel agent. One lady was a department manager at the Plunkett Gerald Grocer Company. Arthur B. Hill was at 2304 South Summit, and he was the principal of Little Rock High School at that time, which would have been over where East Side Junior High is now, or that building. 2305, William Webb was president of Webb Furniture Company on West 7th Street. There was a lawyer, a manager of Fairbanks Morrison Company, another travel agent. John Vine across the street was the manager of the Philip Carey Company, which sold pipe and boiler coverings, asbestos materials, rubber roofing, and bridge and metal paints. Then there was a woman at 2317, Martha Klein, who ran the Little Rock Conservatory for Music. Edward Colgan, here in this house at that time, was the proprietor of the Little Rock Boiler and Iron Works. So I've got a couple of his old advertisements on the PowerPoint as well. To the south of us, the 2 homes, one of them which is gone on the corner across from us, Daniel Phones, who was a partner in Owens & Phones, real estate brokers, farmlands, and insurance. And coincidentally, Mr. Phones' office was just upstairs from the Holman Real Estate Company office. So they developed this area and he built a house in the neighborhood. And then Albert Moore was the conductor for the Rock Island Railroad. This house was occupied by Edward Colgan from the time it was built in 1913 until Mr. Colgan's death in 1931. Edward Colgan was born in 1866 in Illinois to Irish parents and was living in Little Rock by 1890 when he married Irene Johnson. Edward and Irene had one daughter, Alma. Just after the turn of the 20th century, Edward Colgan began working as a blacksmith for the Choctaw, Oklahoma and Gulf Railroad, which was later purchased by the Rock Island, and he lived at 621 Cypress in North Little Rock. In 1908, he was secretary for the Little Rock Boiler and Iron Works at Markham and Spring Streets, where he built boilers and tanks, and he lived at 2606 Battery. By 1911, he had been promoted to secretary and treasurer of that company, and he briefly lived on Arch Street. In 1912, he's listed as the owner, the proprietor of the Little Rock Boiler and Iron Works, and he lived on Capitol, where he remained until the house here at 2318 was completed. Interestingly, Colgan installed iron boilers or radiators in almost every room of this house on Summit Street in order to showcase, his handiwork. None of those are left in the house, though. Colgan's daughter was a talented pianist who taught music lessons out of her parents' home, and by 1922, she operated the Alma Colgan School of Music in downtown Little Rock. Her advertisement in the 1922 city directory lists that she had 2 different helpers, and they would help her teach piano, pipe organ, and musical theory. Alma continued to live with her parents until their deaths, and as far as I know, she never married. Irene Colgan died on January 22nd, 1930, followed by Edward Colgan on August 5th, 1931. And I couldn't find their daughter in Little Rock city directories anytime after that, so she must have moved after that point. After Edward and Irene died, the house was occupied by Harold Parker and his wife Roberta. Parker was the manager of an insurance agency in Little Rock. The home was listed as vacant in 1940, but by 1942 it was occupied by Henry Ross and his wife Leela, and Mr. Ross was a switchman for the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad. The Ross family stayed here until about 1950, and then in the 1950s it was occupied by the Ewing S. Chappell family. And Chappell, the older Mr. Chappell, was a physician here in Little Rock. Some of you may know about his son, Charles or Chuck Chappell, Dr. Chuck Chappell, who was a well-known English professor at Hendrix College for many years, from 1969 until he retired in 2010. He spent his teenage years in this house. From 1961 until about 1990, E.O. Huddleston and his wife Ruby lived here, and he was a clerk at the post office. By 95, the house was listed as not verified in directories, meaning that there was nobody living here full time. The home deteriorated and was left vulnerable to vagrants and vandals. The Central High neighborhood is really in transition right now, but as you can see, many of the houses are coming back one at a time, including this one. And you can look at the difference made in this block just from 2009 till today. Some of you may remember a sandwiching tour I did across the street at 2315 in 2009. And at that point in time, this house and the house just to the north of us, the kind of salmon-colored house, both of these were in, especially that one, were in terrible shape. And if you look at them now, they look great. So a lot of work has been done, especially on this block, but throughout the neighborhood. A crew led by Donna Thomas rehabilitated 4 of the houses on this block. And none of these projects would have been possible without the State Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credit, which is administered through our office. And Jennifer Carmen is here today. She worked as a design consultant for those rehab projects with Donna Thomas. The state tax credit is a major incentive for historic preservation. 25% of the approved rehabilitation costs for a historic home may be claimed as a tax credit. And this is available to anyone who pays state income tax in Arkansas. There are a few requirements though, such as the property must be listed on or eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, and the work must follow preservation guidelines, so it's best to call us before you lift a hammer. Once this house was rehabbed, Justin LaFoon purchased it, and he's lived here since July of 2012. And now I'm going to tell you about some details while we're all together, and you can hear me, and you won't see some of these until you get a chance to look around. The house originally had 4 bedrooms and 1 bath. The upstairs bath is the original bath, as well as it has the original clawfoot tub and pedestal sink upstairs. It now has 4 bedrooms and 3 baths. The half enclosed porch, on the front porch over here, this little sunroom area, that is either original, but if not, it's been there a long time. It's been enclosed for a long time. On the 1939 Sanborn map, it shows it enclosed already by the late 30s. To point out the pocket doors here, and then there's another pocket door in the back part of the dining room whenever you go back that way. Mentioned it earlier, but oak trim and floors throughout the house, except for new pine floors in the downstairs bath, which is back in this corner, in the mud room in the back, and also in the kitchen, because those floors were too deteriorated to repair. Stone fireplace over here, now painted, because it had so much other paint just kind of splashed on it, they couldn't get it off. The built-in cabinet by the fireplace, way over in this corner. The front door is original with the transom and the side lights, and it's got an old, if not original, a historic screen door. If you didn't notice that whenever you came in, the screen door is very decorative with metal on the front with these little swirl motif and a bird on it. Reproduction light fixtures throughout the house. There were no original light fixtures left in the house whenever they started the rehab, but these were all custom made by a company in California to be period appropriate and match some of the fixtures in other homes on this block. The downstairs bathroom, which again is back in this corner whenever you start looking around, that was likely a food prep area originally, and it had that pocket door into the dining area. The mudroom in the very back, which is straight back at the very back of the house in the center, was originally a small open back porch, and you can tell that because it's got some exterior siding. Whenever you open up the back, you can open up and look inside the cabinets. I've gotten permission. You can see exterior siding in the back of the cabinet and a window in the back of the cabinet, as well as an enclosed opening, which was the milk drop. It would allow the milkman to come and bring your milk and cream and put it into your ice box, which was that built-in, there's a built-in cabinet in this little butler's pantry area where he could come and drop it in from the back porch and not have to come inside the house. Separate servants staircase, which is back in this area, to allow servants to pass and go throughout the house without being seen by the residents or their guests. You can see in the floor in certain places, there's one spot kind of close to me right here, and you can look around, you can see the places where the boilers or radiators were located all throughout the house. The old sleeping porch upstairs is now a huge bathroom and closet, but the interesting thing about that are the windows.
Closet, like if you're out there, you can see the stuff in the closet from that
Okay,
window.
so there's 2 tracks.
Yeah.
Oh, and then this one, before it was painted right here, this one would do the same thing.
Down in.
There's another track for it right here.
Wow.
And then you could just close.
Was that a common thing they did back in the day?
No, I've never seen it like this. Never, ever. And they would have had a screen out here, and so it would have been just like an open, screen porch.
Yeah, this